There's something magical about this season, a kind of stillness, a kind of softness, that makes us pause in ways we don't during the rest of the year. And before we go any further, I want you to stay with me, because this isn't a speech about decorating your home or arranging perfect moments. This is a message about creating a Christmas that feels like a deep breath, a warm blanket, a safe place for your heart to land. If you've ever felt overwhelmed, rushed, or emotionally drained by the expectations of the holidays, this speech will gently pull you back to what actually matters. When we think of a cozy Christmas aesthetic, our minds go to lights, textures, colors, and scenery, but the real coziness comes from the emotional atmosphere we create, the feeling of being able to exhale, the relief of not having to pretend, the comfort of being accepted exactly as you are. That's the kind of Christmas we're talking about, a Christmas rooted in emotional warmth, not outward perfection. Cozy Christmas isn't created by decorations, color palettes, or the perfect aesthetic. It's created by the way the season makes you feel, safe, grounded, held, and connected. The first moment you step into December, something subtle happens inside you. You crave warmth, not just from blankets and fireplaces, but from gentleness, sincerity, and emotional closeness. A cozy Christmas begins within, long before it shows up in your surroundings. It starts with the decision to create a space where your heart can breathe. We spend so much of the year pushing, striving, performing, and proving. The holidays often amplify that pressure. There are expectations to host beautifully, to act joyfully, to show up cheerfully, even when life feels heavy. But a cozy Christmas doesn't demand performance. It offers permission. Permission to slow down, permission to rest, permission to feel whatever you're feeling, permission to reconnect with yourself in a way that feels nurturing and honest. When you strip away the pressure, what remains is the emotional core of the season: comfort, belonging, stillness, and connection. That is where coziness lives. It's not found in the picture, perfect tree, or the matching pajamas. It's found in the atmosphere you create inside yourself and around you. It's that quiet moment when you sit with a warm drink and let your shoulders drop for the first time in weeks. It's the softness that comes when you dim the lights and let the room glow just enough to feel peaceful. It's the simplicity of being surrounded by what truly matters, not decorations, but meaning. A cozy Christmas offers a different kind of invitation, to be present instead of polished, to be real instead of ready for us, play. It tells you that you don't need to earn rest or prove your worth through perfect planning. It reminds you that the most memorable parts of the season will never be staged. They're felt, not arranged. They come in the warmth of a conversation, the shared smile across a room, the quiet comfort of being near someone who understands you without needing explanations. This season gently encourages you to create emotional spaces where you feel safe to show up as yourself. Spaces where you don't have to hide your exhaustion or pretend to be overflowing with cheer. Spaces where softness is allowed, where silence is welcome, where tenderness feels natural. That is the heart of cozy, a home for your emotions, not just for your decor. And when you allow yourself to experience Christmas from this place of internal warmth, everything around you becomes richer. The lights feel softer, the moments feel deeper, the connections feel more real. A cozy Christmas begins when you choose to feel rather than perform, when you choose presence instead of pressure, and when you choose emotional warmth over external perfection. This is the foundation that makes the season meaningful, comforting, and genuinely magical. The warmth we crave during the holiday season is rarely found in the perfectly curated decorations or the perfect living rooms we see online. Instead, it lives in the quieter moments that almost always go unnoticed unless we intentionally pause long enough to feel them. A cozy Christmas aesthetic isn't really about the candles or blankets or warm lights. It's about the atmosphere we create inside ourselves. It's the internal shift where we choose gentleness over pressure, slowness over rush, and presence over performance. When we talk about building this inner warmth, we're really talking about building a safe emotional space, a place where we can show up authentically, breathe deeply, and simply be enough as we are. There's something transformative about giving yourself permission to slow down. Most of us move through December with a long list of expectations, obligations, and the subtle fear of disappointing someone. But the real magic begins when we stop trying to meet every imagined standard and instead ask, What feels nourishing to me right now? That question alone can change the way we experience the entire season, because when we tune into what genuinely restores us, we start creating moments that feel grounded, peaceful, and deeply personal. We trade overstimulation for softness, we trade chaos for calm, and we discover that we don't have to earn rest. We're already worthy of it. The truth is that a cozy environment begins with emotional intention. Lighting a candle isn't just about fragrance, it's about signaling to yourself that this is a moment you deserve. Wrapping yourself in a warm blanket. It isn't just about comfort, it's a reminder that it's okay to be held even by the simple things. Pouring a quiet cup of tea or coffee isn't about the drink, it's about the ritual of reminding yourself that you matter enough to pause. These small actions, when done with awareness, begin to shape an inner world that feels safe and steady. What makes this mindset powerful is that it shifts us away from the idea that everything must be impressive or Instagram ready to be worthwhile. A cozy Christmas aesthetic is not a performance, it's a feeling. It's found in the dim golden glow of lights reflected in a window, the soft hush of an early winter morning, the warmth of a favorite sweater, or the quiet satisfaction of taking a deep breath without rushing into the next task. When we let ourselves embrace these small sensory details, we anchor our nervous system in calm and presence. And presence, more than any decoration, is what makes the season feel real. Allowing yourself to slow down also makes space for emotional honesty. Instead of pretending everything is perfect, a cozy mindset invites you to acknowledge your exhaustion, your longing, your joy, your nostalgia, or even your grief. It gives you permission to feel. And when you create room for your feelings, you naturally create room for connection, because genuine connection can only grow in the absence of emotional armor. In this way, cultivating inner warmth is not just self-care, it's the foundation of meaningful relationships. There is a unique kind of magic that happens when we let traditions evolve instead of forcing them to remain exactly the same. Most of us inherit traditions we feel obligated to keep alive. Rituals, routines, gatherings, meals, expectations that have been passed down through generations. And while some of these traditions warm our hearts and help us feel connected to something bigger than ourselves, others can feel heavy, outdated, or misaligned with who we've become. The heart of a cozy Christmas lies in giving ourselves the courage to reshape these traditions into something that fits the life we're living today, not a version of ourselves we outgrew years ago. There's a gentle kind of bravery in admitting that some traditions don't feel good anymore. Maybe the large gatherings feel overwhelming. Maybe the pressure to create a perfect home drains the joy out of the season. Maybe the rituals that once felt meaningful now feel like chores. When we allow ourselves to acknowledge this honestly, we free ourselves from the unspoken rule that tradition must never change. Instead, we open the door to something more authentic, rituals that evolve with us, rituals that reflect who we are now, rituals that truly bring warmth instead of stress. Letting traditions evolve isn't about abandoning the past, it's about honoring it in a way that still nourishes you. It might mean simplifying a family dinner into something more intimate. It might mean adjusting giving so it feels thoughtful instead of burdensome. It might mean choosing one or two rituals that genuinely spark joy and letting the rest fall away. Or it might look like creating entirely new traditions that feel more aligned with your current values. Something as simple as a quiet walk on a cold evening, watching a favorite movie every year, or setting aside time for reflection instead of rushing from event to event. There is also something deeply validating about designing traditions that make room for your emotional reality. For some people, December brings grief, memories of lost loved ones, loneliness, or unspoken sadness. When traditions are rigid, they leave no space for these emotions, but when traditions evolve, you create moments that hold you gently rather than requiring you to hide how you feel. You allow room for remembrance, stillness, or even joy that arises unexpectedly. This is the beauty of flexible traditions. They meet you where you are, not where people expect you to be. A cozy Christmas aesthetic grows richer when our traditions feel meaningful instead of mechanical. When we intentionally choose rituals that reflect our values, connection, rest, presence, simplicity, we create a version of the holiday season that feels deeply personal. Instead of performing the holidays, we begin living them. And that shift can change everything. It turns December from a month of expectations into a month of emotional spaciousness, where we get to decide what matters and let go of what doesn't. In that space, warmth becomes easier to access, joy becomes more honest, and the season becomes something that belongs fully to us. There is a certain kind of peace that comes from embracing simplicity, a peace that often gets buried under the weight of December's expectations. We live in a world that rewards more decorations, more events, more gifts, more productivity. But the essence of a cozy Christmas is found in the opposite, choosing less so we can feel more. Simplicity is not about missing out, it is about making room. It's about clearing emotional and physical clutter so the things that truly matter can take root and breathe. When we strip away the excess, what remains is intentionally chosen, deeply meaningful, and profoundly grounding. Simplicity invites us to take a step back and really examine what we've been carrying. The holiday season often arrives with a long list of invisible weights: the pressure to create perfect moments, the pressure to impress guests, the pressure to be endlessly cheerful even when we're exhausted. But a cozy Christmas asks us to pause long enough to ask ourselves a gentle question. What would feel good if I allowed myself to choose freely? This question disrupts autopilot. It pulls us out of obligation and places us back into agency. Simplicity begins with that moment of honesty. When we allow ourselves to simplify, we create a softer environment for our hearts to rest. Instead of decorating every corner, we might choose just a few pieces that hold real meaning. Instead of filling our days with back-to-back commitments, we might protect a few evenings of stillness. Instead of buying gifts out of duty, we might choose fewer gifts with more love behind them, or shift toward presence-based giving, where memories matter more than material things. Simplicity doesn't shrink the holiday, it deepens it. It invites us to savor instead of rush, to notice instead of perform. Simplicity also nurtures connection in a way that complexity rarely can. When we're not overwhelmed by constant busyness, we become more available. To ourselves, to our loved ones, to the small moments that often carry the most meaning. A quiet evening with soft lights and warm blankets can become a sacred space. A slow conversation over a simple meal can become more intimate than any elaborate gathering. When we stop trying to keep up with an idealized version of Christmas, we become present enough to feel the version we are actually living. And there's another layer to this. Simplicity helps us access gratitude more naturally. When we're not distracted by excessive noise, we can see beauty in the little things: the glow of lights across the room, the comfort of a familiar scent, the warmth of a hand resting on ours, the sound of laughter drifting from another space. These small details often hold more emotional weight than the grand moments we chase. Simplicity turns ordinary details into sources of joy. Ultimately, choosing simplicity is an act of self-kindness. It's acknowledging that you don't need to earn your worth through effort or presentation. It's reminding yourself that joy doesn't need anything extravagant to exist. It just needs room. And when we make that room intentionally, December starts to feel less like a season we're trying to survive and more like a season we're finally able to experience with our whole heart. One of the most beautiful parts of cultivating a cozy Christmas lies in the courage to make space for both joy and vulnerability. The holidays have a way of stirring up old memories, unresolved emotions, and bittersweet nostalgia. And yet, we often feel an unspoken pressure to stay cheerful, to hide anything that doesn't fit the picture of constant celebration. But a truly meaningful and emotionally safe December doesn't come from pretending we're fine, it comes from allowing ourselves to feel what's real. When we make room for the full spectrum of our emotions, we create a deeper, more authentic kind of warmth that doesn't disappear when the lights dim. The truth is that vulnerability isn't a sign of weakness during the holidays. It's a form of emotional honesty that makes joy more accessible. When we give ourselves permission to acknowledge stress, loneliness, grief, or simply exhaustion, we stop fighting against ourselves. That inner resistance is what drains us the most. The moment we let ourselves feel, our emotional landscape softens. It becomes easier to breathe, it becomes easier to connect, and it becomes easier to notice the small, comforting moments that were always there but buried under pressure. Vulnerability creates space for joy to land gently instead of being forced. Creating an emotionally safe Christmas also means recognizing that your experience doesn't need to match anyone else's. Some people are energized by big gatherings, others find solace in quiet mornings. Some feel inspired by festive activities, others feel overwhelmed by them. Emotional safety begins when we stop comparing our holiday to someone else's and start honoring what feels manageable and nourishing for us. This can be as simple as saying no to one event, or as meaningful as admitting that the season brings up a kind of ache you don't fully understand. The goal isn't to avoid emotions, it's to make room for them without judgment. And when we allow ourselves this honesty, something powerful happens. We open the door for deeper connection with others. Authentic connection thrives where emotional masks fall away. When we show up as we are, we invite others to do the same. A cozy Christmas is not just about soft lights and warm blankets. It's about creating relationships where people feel safe to be real, imperfect, and human. Sometimes the most meaningful holiday moment is a raw conversation at a quiet kitchen table, a shared memory that brings tears, or a laugh that emerges unexpectedly after a tough day. Vulnerability turns these moments into anchors. There is also a kind of strength in acknowledging what we miss. People who are no longer here, traditions that have faded, versions of ourselves we've grown out of. A cozy holiday makes room for this grief without letting it overshadow the entire season. It allows us to honor the past while still being present for the small joys of today. Emotional safety doesn't require us to choose between joy and sorrow. It simply asks us to let them coexist, trusting that the presence of one does not erase the other. There is something profoundly powerful about choosing presence in a season that constantly tries to pull us away from it. December often becomes a long list of tasks: buy this, wrap that, send this, attend that. Without even realizing it, we end up rushing through a month that was meant to be savored. But the heart of a cozy Christmas isn't found in the speed of what we accomplish. It's found in the quality of how we experience each moment. Presence is the quiet decision to slow down enough to notice the life happening right in front of us. Small, delicate, fleeting, and incredibly meaningful. Presence begins with intention. It means resisting the pull of distraction and choosing to actually inhabit your experiences instead of observing them from a distance. It means putting the phone down while someone is speaking, feeling the warmth of your mug before taking the first sip, stepping outside for a moment of cold air just to feel alive, or sitting by the lights in your living room without needing to turn it into content. These moments seem simple, almost too simple, but that simplicity is exactly what makes them powerful. Presence transforms the ordinary into something sacred. One of the greatest gifts we can give ourselves during the holiday season is permission to be where our feet are. When we slow down enough to truly see the people around us, we notice details we often miss. The way their eyes soften when they talk about something meaningful, the warmth in their laugh, the stories they repeat because they want someone to remember. We often say we want deeper connection, but deeper connection begins with deeper attention. Presence isn't passive, it's an act of love. It communicates you matter, this moment matters, I am here. Presence also helps anchor us when emotions rise, as they often do in December. Instead of being swept away by stress or pulled into the weight of memories, presence creates a grounding point. It gives us something to hold onto. It allows us to take things one breath at a time, one task at a time, one moment at a time. When we are present, we stop reliving the past or rehearsing the future. We soften into the now, and the now is always more manageable than the story we build around it. There is a quiet rebellion in choosing presence when the world insists on productivity. When you let yourself enjoy a slow morning, linger in a conversation, or simply sit in silence, you reclaim your time instead of letting it slip away unnoticed. Memories are born out of presence, not performance. Years from now, the things you'll remember will be small. The warmth of someone's hand, the glow of a single candle on a dark evening, the way laughter echoed in a room that felt safe. These memories are stitched from moments you were truly there for. And the beauty is that presence costs nothing. It doesn't require perfection, planning, or performance. It only requires willingness, a willingness to slow down, to notice, to feel, to honor the moment for exactly what it is. In a cozy Christmas, presence becomes the gentle heartbeat that steadies everything else, reminding us that the most meaningful parts of life are already here, waiting for us to see them.